You are listening to Middle East Monitor Conversations, bringing you lively discussions with prominent voices from the region and beyond, as we delve deeper into issues shaping the Middle East and North Africa, from politics, the culture, and the arts.
Hello and welcome to another conversation with the Middle East Monitor. Today's host is me, Naseem Ahmed, and I have a wonderful guest to discuss Germany's unwavering support for Israel, Professor Dr. Jurgen Mackert. Professor Mackert, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
So Jürgen is a professor of sociology at the University of Potsdam, Germany. He was a temporary professor for the structure of modern societies at the University of Erfurt, Germany, and a visiting professor for political sociology at Humboldt University, Berlin. I hope I'm pronouncing those names correctly. His latest book is on social closure, theorizing exclusion, exploitation, and elimination. So as I said, I've invited Professor Mackert to discuss Germany's foreign policy and its support for Israel. I think it's no exaggeration to say that, over the past 14 months, Germany, alongside the US, has been the most ardent and zealous defenders of Israel, despite the horrors and the barbarism we see on our screens following Israel's assault on Gaza. Both Germany and the US and other European countries have consistently rushed to Israel's defense. And but Germany, for its part, has of course offered ironclad support, but its support for Israel is rooted in a more complex, and I would say more complex historical reasons, which most of our listeners would know. So I wanted to kind of unpack the history of German support for Israel and what's motivating that. So I want to begin, Jürgen, if I may, just asking you, to list the German policies over the past 14 months regarding Israel and Gaza, and what have been some of the key policy positions taken by Berlin regarding Israel and Gaza.
I think the point is that what we have seen in the last 14 months is very consistent with what Germany has been doing in the last decades. So it's support for Israel, whatever it does, even in the face of genocide, which was clear from the beginning after the 7th of October. And if we look at the main policies, I think the most important thing is that Germany became part of the ICJ case, of the South African ICJ case to back Israel, which was certainly a surprise for some, but not for anybody who was observing German support for Israel over the long term. The second one may be that Germany increased its military support. It is a tenfold increase, while Germany is already the second biggest supporter of Israel with military equipment, and this in the time when the genocide was already in full swing. And we have seen that just a few weeks ago, at the end of October, Germany sent a ship with explosives to Israel, while the genocide was so obvious and could not be debated or rejected. And this may be the most important, or these may be the most important policies at the moment. But then there is also something that is obvious to see, which is the total denial of the genocide, and that Germany still supports this genocide with referring to the right of Israel to defend itself. This is a kind of strategy or policy that Germany has been developing and exerting over the years, over the decades, There is always the guilty part and the others who have to suffer and have the right to defend themselves. And what is also very important to see, I think, is not only the policies outside of Germany or to the outside, but also the policies within Germany. And we have seen an enormous ongoing repression of any kind of dissent to this kind of policies in the face of genocide. It's a full support of the Zionist atrocities, and wherever you find a rejection of these policies or dissent, you see immediately how people are sentenced and how harsh the consequences can be in the area of cultural festivals, the academia, the public discourse itself is silenced. And maybe the last and really not shocking, but also more or less consequential step was then the passing of the resolution "Never Again is Now: Protecting, Preserving, and Strengthening Jewish Life in Germany," which, with the exception of, I think it was 10 parliamentarians, the whole government and the parliamentarians in the German Bundestag passed. And this is an instrument. This resolution follows the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, and it is a clear sign to the German public that any dissent will be further restricted, repressed, sentenced, and people are going to be afraid of uttering something in support of Palestinians and against Israel and the genocide.
You mentioned the bill that was passed recently, "Never Again is Now." And we've seen in Germany over the past 14 months, protesters being arrested, even Jewish protesters as well. And I was wondering, is there a gap between, many countries there is a gap, huge gap between public opinion and the position taken by their governments. What's unique about Germany, from what I see, is that it doesn't matter which spectrum, which party you are, whether you're the Greens or someone from centrist or right of center, everyone provides ironclad support for Israel. We saw the statement by the foreign minister of Germany. I think she's from the Greens, and the comment she made providing ironclad support for Israel would be surprising to many, because Greens normally you associate with having more of a pro-Palestinian approach, supporting international law and all those features of support for Palestine. But in the Greens in Germany also, similar to the parties in the center and the center-right, offering absolute support for Israel. So the question is there a gap between, or how big is the gap between public opinion about what's happening in Gaza and the position of the government?
Actually, if we first think about public opinion in the form of media, there is no gap. Also, they are from kind of self-declared progressive or liberal left papers to the right-wing papers. They are all in full support. But there is a huge gap, I think, if we go to some polls that have been taken, which show that during the last year, there is an enormous shift. So meanwhile, about 70% of the population are not fine with what Israel is doing and are not fine with what Germany is doing in support. But if you go to politics or to the media who dominate this discourse, you find hardly any dissent. Only recently, in the last weeks, after the ICC warrants were issued, there is a little cracks in this structure. So sometimes there is a kind of didn't Israel go too far? So should we really? It's a slight way to ask about the legitimacy of what is happening. But basically, there is a huge consensus from left to right, as you say, which has been constructed over the decades. But people who answer to polls are not fine with this politics anymore. And I think mainly young people are very critical of what happens in Palestine because they see what happens there. I mean, there is no way to conceal what is going on, and there is no way to justify what happens. And I think the politics of Germany you can describe with two positions: is rejection and denial. So it's whenever there is a kind of critique of Israel, it's rejected, such as Israel is an apartheid state, like the ICJ did. So it's rejected without giving a reason why. Politicians just don't see it that way, and that's the point. And there is denial, like now with the war crimes, with the genocide, which is not accepted as a genocide, although there are so many, there is so much proof that what is going on is one of the worst genocides we've ever seen.
And you mentioned the ICC, International Criminal Court, issuing the arrest warrant, and that's been quite revealing, the response anyway from Germany and many of the Western countries. So Germany is one of a few countries who have said that they are examining the response to the ICC. I mean, they seem to be stuck on, on the one hand, support for international law, and on the other hand, providing ironclad support and coming to Israel's defense. Which one of those do you think will win out in the end when it comes to the ICC? Because it's saying it's reviewing. France, for example, it's changed its position and said that it will issue some kind of immunity to Netanyahu. The UK is also thinking about offering or finding a way to grant immunity to Benjamin Netanyahu. What's Germany's position? I suppose it's probably going to end up in the same position as some of the other major European countries.
You only can hope that Germany is moving, but if you see this play now with they have to examine something. I mean, actually, there is nothing to examine. Germany is a signatory state of the ICC, so it has the obligation to issue warrants whenever Galland or Netanyahu come to Germany. And it's not only that Germany is obliged to do this because of the ICC, it's also because of the German basic law, which is our constitution. So we are bound. So Germany cannot examine anything. If it does now examine and try to find a way out of this catch-22 in a way, they delegitimize not only the international law and its institutions, but only Germany's basic law itself. And this is something that has not been debated. Last week, there was a press conference with legal scholars who pointed out that actually there is nothing to decide and that Germany cannot examine now anything. But what you see is, I think, that Germany did not expect in any sense that these warrants would be issued. So now they start to think about, they could have thought about for half a year now, what will we do if it happens? But they were so sure that it would not happen. And now this is a problem, and they have to accommodate. And actually, there is no way for them to examine anything. They just have to follow the rules. They have to follow not only international law or the way they are obliged to do, but also with regard to the German Grundgesetz, the basic law itself. I don't know. I'm afraid.
I mean, if I can add to that, then I mean, so say presuming Germany does what France has done and what the UK has done, which is to provide some kind of immunity. Is there any mechanism within Germany, and are there individuals and groups who are willing and able to challenge the government's position? If the government was to say, okay, we will give immunity to Netanyahu and we will brush aside the ICC demand for arrest warrants, and then provide support for Israel. Is there a way to challenge that in Germany?
I don't think that there would be any challenge from the parliament or from political parties. But I think there are now, during the last months, it developed more and more in civil society that groups of scholars, groups of activists are going to court against such things. And I think there would be reactions to any kind of effort to just to ignore what the ICC does. I don't think it will be so easy for Germany, but I would expect at the moment that they try to find any kind of way, because of the so-called special obligation to Israel, because of the German history, that they try to construct something that they think might help them out of this obviously clear situation.
Let's look at some of the broader features of Germany's support for Israel. There is a term that's I can't pronounce it properly. It's called Staatsraison, German's commitment. Yeah,
Staatsraison.
yeah, which is Germany's commitment to Israel's security as a reason for its existence, for its purpose as a state. Can you explain that, and how has that influenced Germany's foreign policy? I mean, that, of course, as I mentioned, is another layer of why Germany supports Israel the way it does, unlike many of the other countries, because of the guilt of the Holocaust, coming to terms with the past. So these are all other layers of complexity or motivational factors that is added to why German supports Israel. So can you just explain that for us?
Actually, yes, the so-called Staatsraison, the reason of state, is a concept from the 14th century. And Angela Merkel, our then chancellor, she announced that Israel's security was the reason of state for Germany in 2008. And since then, this has become a kind of ever-repeated argument, although actually it is not an argument. It was kind of her opinion, and she uttered that, and now everybody repeats it. Our now chancellor repeats it again and again, that this seems to be something. But the thing is that the so-called reason of state as a concept from the 14th century is today used in the sense of how should nation states operate within systems of networks with other nation states in the global system, things like this, very technical debates. But what Merkel did, she took the concept and made out of this concept a kind of how can the German state have some kind of a dignity. So in a way, she tried to endow the state with a quasi-religious consecration. And this means that dignity for the German state, or even dignity for the Germans, only comes from supporting Israel, understanding that the Holocaust obliges us not only, as the resolution also says, to have a responsibility for Jewish life, but that we have a responsibility to the Zionist state. And this means that a state like Germany makes itself more or less dependent on what the Zionist state wants and does. So if you argue that the German Staatsraison means that we have to defend Israel, whatever it does, so in the end, you end up in a situation like now. The Zionist state is committing genocide, and you cannot step back, because if this is the reason of state to defend Israel, you have to go until the end.
So sorry, continue.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah, so what that means essentially is that the German story, as it's understood by its leaders, is that Germany's very existence has to support Israel no matter what, because Israel's existence is tied to some kind of a happy ending from the murderous Holocaust from during the Nazis. So if Israel is not a happy ending, if Zionism does not have a happy ending, then that somehow is a condemnation of Germany itself. So Germany is ideologically wedded to this narrative of having allowing Zionism to flourish and having a redemptive purpose for Germany itself, that there is a happy ending to the Holocaust. We supported Jewish settlement in Palestine, and we will continue to do so. And this happy ending somehow vindicates Germany. Is that the narrative German leaders tell themselves?
Yeah, this is the narrative, but it's not really what was going on historically or even after the Holocaust. So the idea, or what most Germans learn at school or hear in the media or wherever, is that somehow Israel was created after the Holocaust, because of the Holocaust, and that the Zionist state, which was then founded in 1948, is an immediate consequence of the Holocaust. But that's not the case. I mean, hardly anybody here knows about the beginnings of Zionist settlement in Palestine. So which was in the late 19th century, and not only the Germans after the Second World War, but I mean already the German Emperor Wilhelm II supported the settlements in Palestine. Our first chancellor after the war, Konrad Adenauer, who was the mayor of Cologne in the beginning of the century, supported this. So we know that the Nazis cooperated with the Zionists, and then after the Second World War, again, Konrad Adenauer as a chancellor, he went on to support. So there is a long historical tradition of German support for Zionist settlements and colonizing in Palestine. And this is never discussed in Germany. So there is only what you referred correctly to, this kind of, we did the Holocaust, it happened, we can't explain why it happened, it was a breakdown of civilization. And after this, we made everything fine because we supported the Jewish Zionist settlement in Palestine. But what is never asked is why Germany thinks that the Palestinians have to pay the price for their Holocaust, for the German Holocaust. So if Germany actually would have wanted to do something, they could have given them a part of Germany. If they really think that they should support a Jewish state, they could have given them a part of Germany. But the question is always, why does Germany support or think that Palestinians should pay the price for the Holocaust of the white European Jews? This is something that would open up the discussion about, is there a happy ending? And there is no happy ending, because with the beginning of the settlement in Palestine, the catastrophe for the Palestinians started. So there is no way out of this kind of having consequences. What you do has consequences. And if you support the settlement, and of course, there was also the idea, if the Jews go out of Germany and Europe and they go to Israel, what is called Israel, or to Palestine, they will be out of Europe. We always have not only this kind of, we want the Jews to live a good life, but there's always also the idea that we want the Jews to be out of Germany or of Europe. And then you can push them out to Palestine. This is a very strange thing, and it is never discussed in Germany.
Yeah, it's true. And I think, like you mentioned, you don't, to account for one injustice, you don't create another injustice, which is exactly what happened by creating a Jewish state in Palestine. And the just and fair solution, which many would advocate for, is that, Jews should have been settled. Germany should have paid the price by, giving territory or allowing Jews to resettle injured. And that would have been, that's an argument many would make. I understand, I get that. But I'm wondering, in Germany itself, is there any pushback against the idea of the reason for the state, which we just discussed? Because if you look at the US, for example, there is a realization, an awakening from some segments of US, especially from the right, the idea that America should be for America first. It shouldn't be for someone else. We want America to pursue foreign policy which is in the interest of the US, not in the interest of Israel, not in the interest of NATO countries, but for America first. So is there something similar? I would assume that, given that there is an ideological position within Germany, that they are wedded to this idea of reason for the state of Germany being providing security for Israel, many German would kind of balk at that if you knew that, it's Israel first, then Germany. In the US, there's a backlash against that, but is there a backlash against this idea in Germany?
Well, I mean, if you look at the situation with regard to the war in Ukraine, I mean, there is about Germany first. But whenever Israel comes into the game, then this switches. And it's not about Germany. It's not about having a discourse on should we support or should we not support. Immediately when there is another attack on Gaza, like the last 10, 15, 20 years, if there is the next assault on Lebanon, wherever, then it's Israel first. Whenever Israel goes to war, it's Israel first. And this is hardly questioned in Germany. I mean, you see this, how often the term of reason of state is repeated in political debates, in public discourses, in the media. This seems to be something as if Angela Merkel had uttered a kind of eternal truth, that there is no alternative for us. So in a way, you can't question that Germany, whenever Israel needs anybody to support him, that we are at the side of Israel. And this then led to the ICJ case and the situation that you take part in this process to support Israel and defend it, although you see exactly what they are doing.
I wanted to just move the conversation along to a couple of articles and books you've published and written recently, where you speak about the logic of settler colonialism. And you argue in your articles that the logic of settler colonialism and racism, which animated the Holocaust and German imperialism in parts of Africa, this is the same logic that is justifying the genocide in Gaza. So can you just explain that and unpack what you were arguing in those articles and your book?
What you see with regard to collective memory, or if you call it that in Germany, so there is only the Holocaust as the single linchpin. So there's a kind of absolutizing the Holocaust and this so-called or alleged responsibility for the Zionist settler colonial regime. And making the Holocaust and these 12 years of National Socialism the only reference point of this collective memory leaves out a lot of atrocities that Germany did as well in history, but which have play no role in the construction of this collective memory. So if you go back, I mean, I have to add, we have a debate also, had a long debate in Germany that National Socialism and especially the Holocaust are a kind of breakdown of civilization. So this means that you think, or you try to make an argument that it is not explainable how this all happened, because before Germany was a democratic, peaceful, civilized country, and suddenly civilization broke down. But if you look at German history, you see different things. Germany, although it doesn't like to hear that, Germany was a settler colonial state in Namibia and in other places. But in Namibia especially, Germany perpetrated the first genocide of the 20th century. And with killing 10,000s of Nama and Herero, there was a kind of mentality that characterizes all settler colonial states, that there is a huge divide between civilization, which the Germans argue that they were the civilized people, and the barbarians, which always are the indigenous. This is the basic logic of settler colonial projects. So you can always argue, we come here as civilized people, we bring you a kind of civilized life or whatever. But the fact is that this logic of elimination, as it's called in settler colonial theory, can easily slip into genocide. So you can eliminate people by taking away their culture, by taking away their language or whatever, but you can also commit genocide and kill them in tens of thousands or in millions. And this mentality, this brutality, this extreme brutality that the Germans enacted in Namibia came back to the motherland, to Germany itself, and was easily picked up by the National Socialists. So this distinction between civilization and barbarism is what you find in the kind of division of the German Aryan culture and the Jews. And you have again this divide of civilized and barbarians. And today you find this distinction in Palestine. If the Zionists talk about human animals, you have the same divide. It's on the one side the people who deserve to live, on the other the people who have to die or can die. And what I wanted to argue in this article was not a direct link, but that we find in both countries, in Namibia and in Palestine, the same kind of logic, how settler colonialism develops, how it creates this kind of distinction between civilization and barbarism. And this kind of distinction and this deep cleavage between these two groups can easily then go and get genocidal. So we don't only have this experience with National Socialism and the Holocaust, which has a then alleged responsibility for what Israel is doing, but we have a much longer tradition. And this kind of tradition is blocked in Germany when it comes to culture, the collective memory of the Germans, which is constructed in a way that, except National Socialism and mainly the Holocaust, nothing can really be discussed.
So, given that Germany has settler colonialism and the logic of annihilation of the native is something that's ingrained. It wasn't something that was a one-off occurrence during the Holocaust. Do you think there are ever any red lines when it comes to Germany? Israel now, of course, is speaking about settling in northern Gaza. Genocide is happening right in front of our eyes. ICJ will issue a ruling in probably years to come. The ICC, of course, is investigating. But do you think there could ever be a red line for a country like Germany, given its history, given its the logic of settler colonialism that animates its thinking? Do you think there ever could be a red line for Germany as to how far Israel can go in fulfilling the creation of Greater Israel?
I'm not a prophet, but I'm afraid that there are no red lines for Germany in the support of Israel. I don't know if the ICC or ICJ decisions will make any change and what they do now with thinking about what they have to do. But I don't know what can get worse than 12 months or 14 months, meanwhile, of genocide and this dramatic and horrendous atrocities against the civil population of Gaza. Also, the last 2 months, the war or the atrocities, which follow the same pattern in a way to bomb civilian infrastructure all the time. I don't know. Sometimes I can't imagine things can get worse, and then Germany might say it's enough. I mean, what can get worse than what we have seen in the last 14 months? I'm very skeptical. I'm afraid there are no red lines, and this is what we have seen with Americans as well. Red lines again and again, and when they are crossed, they are crossed.
And I think that's a realization many are having
I can't
as well.
imagine the German can.
Yeah, no, that's a realization many are having. And one thing you could foresee happening is, for their own sense of redemption, we will support Palestinians in resettling them in parts of the Middle East. Imagine that as a scenario. Someone like Trump comes in and says that, okay, this is our solution to the Israel-Palestine issue. We will resettle Palestinians in the Middle East. And I'm sure a lot of the right-wing Israelis are thinking and hoping this is the solution Trump will try and enforce on the Palestinians. And if such a scenario was to appear, Germany will probably say, okay, we will pledge such and such a billion. So this essentially is will be supporting ethnic cleansing and completing the genocide of Palestinians from their historical land. I mean, that's a scenario that's, I know I'm being bleak, but it's quite likely, do you think?
I think that such a plan would find support. It would find support, and the arguments would probably be that we have to, because in the long run, Israel has to have safety from its neighboring countries, and that this is one way. And I mean, you can make the same argument here, like after the Second World War. Yeah, you can of course say that after all what happened, you can't tell Palestinians to live beside Jews anymore. I mean, this is what happened after the Second World War. Jews had to go because they could not live beside Germans anymore. It was impossible. So there are also arguments you can find, and I think Germany would hide again behind its so-called historical guilt, that they have to defend anything and that every solution is better than the next genocide or whatever might happen. They might find certainly some argument if there are solutions, which are no solutions, of course, in the way that you mentioned.
Thank you, Jurgen. I mean, I read your book in e-format, electronic book, sorry, PDF. How can our listeners read your book and find your work, especially the one you're working on with Ilan Pappé? Where can they purchase that from?
The book with Ilan. I mean, the problem is that the book with Ilan is written in German,
Okay.
so there will be a kind of language problem with regard to that. But the book we did is a kind of collection of the most important basic texts of settler colonialism, because this whole debate is more or less excluded from German academia. You will not get funding for anything like this. You will not get money to work on the problems of settler colonialism and so on. So, but you can find this on the classical sites like Amazon, wherever. The book on social closure is one that I have written over the last years, and I mean, social closure is a theoretical instrument. It's a basic tool in sociology, which I try to revive in a way. And as the title already says, it's also about elimination. And the part on elimination is the part on settler colonialism. And what I wanted to do is to bring the whole debate on settler colonialism into the debate of sociology, where it's also non-existent, more or less. So this is a book that is published now. It will be out in November, December. And you can easily get it from any page that offers books, or go directly to Oxford University Press, and you can buy it there.
Thank you. That was Professor Jurgen Mackert joining me, Nassim Ahmed, for our conversation with the Middle East Monitor. Really want to thank you for giving us your time, and also viewers at home for tuning in and listening, however you are listening, whether it be through through YouTube or any Spotify. There are various ways you could be listening to MEMO podcasts and weekly conversations. Thank you again, and I hope to see you again soon.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
This was Middle East Monitor Conversations, brought to you by the Middle East Monitor in London.